Listen to me somewhere right now. A narcissist who once walked away from you with pride in their step and arrogance in their smile is sitting alone, staring into the dim light of an empty room, fighting tears they swore they would never shed. They replay conversations, moments, laughter, your sacrifices, and for the first time it hurts. Their heart feels a weight they can't shake off. They are remembering you not lightly, not casually, but painfully, like a ghost they can't outrun. And you are not here by coincidence. Millions of videos exist online, yet you were led to this word. The Holy Spirit directs footsteps, not algorithms. If you have ever been betrayed by someone you loved deeply, if you once poured into a person who gave you wounds in return, your spirit will recognize this message like a truth you've always known but never had words for. This isn't entertainment. This is revelation. Heavy, spiritual, surgical. Only those who have cried into a pillow while pretending to be okay will feel the weight of the message that's about to unfold. Only those whose hearts were broken by someone who promised love, yet delivered manipulation, will truly understand. If your soul has been stretched by betrayal, then stay, because heaven is speaking directly to the wound beneath your ribs. And now, we move to why they're crying and what God just revealed to them. God has peeled the veil from their eyes, not softly, not gradually, but like light bursting into a room where secrets once hid. For so long they carried themselves as if they were the prize. They walked with a confidence built on your forgiveness. They believed you would always answer, always return, always bend. They assumed your love was permanent, that you'd never leave the table, even when they fed you crumbs. But heaven has flipped the mirror. Now they see what they could not see, when pride spoke louder than conscience. You were the one sent as a blessing, and they handled you like something disposable. They held something holy with unwashed hands. They confused endurance with desperation, compassion with neediness, loyalty with weakness. Yet God has illuminated the truth. You were not clinging, you were covering. Your presence was protection. Your patience was intercession. You were the calm God placed beside their chaos. Heaven does not let the ungrateful keep what they refuse to value. Suddenly, the memories they dismissed as ordinary now sting with revelation. They remember how peace settled when you walked into a room. They remember how your prayers carried them through storms they never thanked you for. They remember how your kindness softened battles their arrogance created. And now, stripped of your covering, their world feels colder, quieter, darker. The lies they once told about you have become thorns in their conscience. The stories they twisted now echo back at them with conviction. Words they used to diminish you have circled like ravens and perched on their own shoulders. What they thought was victory now tastes like defeat. It was never just a breakup. It was the moment grace stepped away. Not the loss of a person, but the loss of favor. Not emotional emptiness, but spiritual bankruptcy. And they feel it not externally, but in the depths of their soul. The absence of your presence is the judgment they never considered. Your silence is the sermon they cannot ignore. This revelation is not gentle, it is justice. And as this truth sinks deeper, it brings us into the reality of where they stand now, in the aftermath of what they destroyed. They do not sleep the way they once did. The nights feel longer now, stretched thin like a whisper that won't fade. Where they once closed their eyes and drifted without care, they now lie awake, staring into the ceiling, counting shadows instead of blessings. The silence that used to comfort them now exposes them, and in that silence, memories of you return like waves hitting the same shoreline again and again, refusing to retreat. It is often near 2 a.m., the hour when the world grows still, and God speaks the loudest, that the weight settles. While you rest under God's peace, They toss beneath blankets that suddenly feel too heavy. They reach for their phone, not because they need entertainment, but because they fear being alone with their mind. They scroll through old conversations they once ignored, old photos they once took for granted, and for the first time, they linger. They zoom into your smile, the softness in your eyes, the warmth in your words, realizing they never deserved any of it. Regret has become their unwanted companion. Not brief, not passing, settled. The life that once felt wide, exciting, full of options, has shrunk into something narrow and exhausting. The places that once fueled their ego parties, attention, constant validation now feel hollow, like walking through a house with furniture but no home. Conversations feel shallow, compliments ring empty. They laugh, but the sound dies quickly, because there's no joy underneath it, only noise. They reach for new supply, as if changing faces could fill a spiritual void. But spiritual emptiness cannot be fed with human attention. A new body does not heal an old wound. Praise from strangers cannot replace peace God removed. They smile for photos, but their eyes betray them. They talk loudly, but their spirit trembles softly. Something is missing, and they finally know what it is. Peace left when you left. Covering lifted when you walked away. And here is the quiet truth that God allows to sting. The bed did not become larger. The absence of your presence made it feel that way. The house did not become colder. The warmth you carried is no longer there. Food tastes the same, but not as satisfying. Their victories feel smaller. Loneliness grows louder. Because when God shuts a door, charm cannot open it, manipulation cannot force it, pride cannot bend it, and no amount of pretending can hide it. They thought hurting you made them powerful, but now they see that power was borrowed, and God just took it back. Doors that once opened easily now resist them like iron gates. Plans crumble without warning, deals fall through, friendships feel distant. Life no longer bends to their will, it bends them. This is not coincidence. This is divine discomfort. God has interrupted their comfort the same way they interrupted your peace. He is dismantling the illusion they lived behind. He is stripping away distractions so they face the truth they ran from. They are not suffering because you cursed them. They are suffering because they mishandled what God sent to bless them. Every inconvenience is a mirror. Every closed door is a sermon. Every restless night is a visitation of truth. They believed losing you was freedom. Now they know it was the moment chains began tightening around their own soul. And as the realization deepens that they did not break you, they broke themselves. A heavier revelation is forming like thunder in the distance, preparing to strike the heart they once shielded with pride. For years they told themselves, and maybe even told others, that you were the emotional one. Too tender, too forgiving, too willing to see the good in someone who kept offering their worst. They mistook your gentleness for fragility, your empathy for naivety, your patience for dependence. They believed they were the anchor, and you were the one adrift. But God has overturned that narrative, like Christ flipping tables in the temple. Sensitivity was never weakness, it was spiritual maturity. Only a soul shaped by God knows how to love without demanding payment. Only a heart refined by heaven understands mercy in the presence of betrayal. And now they see what your tears always testified to: depth, not desperation. You were strong in ways they never understood. Strong to pray instead of retaliate. Strong to stay when it hurt. Strong to walk away when God whispered, "Enough." Some people measure strength by how loudly they speak, but God measures it by how faithfully one can remain silent and still retain love. You did not retreat because you were broken. You stepped back because heaven took the battle out of your hands and into his own. You were waiting for God to respond, and he is responding now. And now, painfully, undeniably, the narcissist sees it. What they thought was their victory has become their defeat. What they considered a casual goodbye has become the wound they cannot close. They thought they replaced you, but God is showing them that you were not another chapter, you were the turning point. This realization burns deeper than embarrassment. It burns through pride, because they now understand what they mishandled. They see the purity of your loyalty, loyalty that bled quietly, prayed privately, forgave silently. You loved in a way they were not capable of loving you back. They gave affection when it benefited them, but you gave yourself even when it cost you. The contrast is divine and brutal. Light exposes ego. Love reveals manipulation. Faith confronts control. You were a garden growing grace, trust, forgiveness, patience. They were a desert, dry, demanding, taking without watering anything in return. You carried living water, and they treated it like tap water. Now they thirst in the very ground they refuse to cultivate. And let this be said clearly, you were never the burden, you were the blessing they couldn't steward. You were the answer to prayers they once cried, but pride made them believe they no longer needed God's answer. The moment they mishandled you was the moment they mishandled what God entrusted to them. Their loss became heaven's lesson. Their betrayal became your elevation. Their abandonment became God's intervention. Before we continue, speak it out. I receive clarity. Say it as a covenant with God, that you now understand your value and will never again reduce yourself for someone who refuses to rise. And now, with this revelation heavy on their soul, God shows why he separated you, not as punishment to you, but as a rescue mission for your purpose. What they thought was rejection was God's redirection. What they thought was departure was God's deliverance. They lost you, and in losing you they lost peace, covering, favor. You became the door God closed so he could open a better one for you. This awakening becomes the bridge into the next truth, that separation from them was never abandonment, but divine salvation woven into pain. God removed you not to reduce you, but to reveal who you really are in his eyes. There came a moment when God stepped between you and the narcissist like a shepherd placing himself between the lamb and the wolf. You may not have recognized it then. It looked like abandonment, like rejection, like the end of something you prayed would be healed. But heaven saw what your heart could not. The separation you cried over was mercy in disguise. God saw the conversations you weren't present for. He saw the mocking when you walked out of the room. He saw the intentions sweetened with charm, but rooted in self-worship. The words they shaped against you, the manipulation they justified, the entitlement they hid beneath affection, none of it escaped his sight. And while you questioned your worth, God was preparing your escape. You thought losing them was a tragedy. God knew staying with them would be won. There are battles God doesn't ask you to fight. He removes you from the battlefield entirely. When he saw how your love was being drained, drop by drop, how your heart was shrinking to fit inside their ego, he intervened. The door that closed was not slammed by betrayal, as much as it was sealed by God to keep your destiny from bleeding out through the cracks of someone else's brokenness. They thought walking away hurt you. They never imagined it was God pulling you out of the fire they would later burn in. You see, love can become a prison when loyalty is given to the wrong authority. You were trying to resurrect something God had already pronounced dead. You were trying to heal a person who enjoyed being wounded because it made them the center of attention. Narcissists do not seek healing, they seek worship, and worship belongs to God alone. So he removed you. Not because you were unworthy, but because your calling was too valuable to waste on someone who refused to grow. The absence you felt was God clearing the stage for transformation. He pulled you out so your heart could breathe again. He separated you so your mind could hear Him clearly. He allowed the pain so you could finally see what heaven had been whispering. You cannot heal what is committed to brokenness. If He had let you stay, you would have continued shrinking yourself to fit inside their comfort. You would have kept apologizing for wounds they caused. You would have remained loyal to someone who saw love as currency and your soul as a supply. But you were created for more than survival. Separation was the surgery that saved your future. God used loss as a scalpel, painful, precise, holy. He cut away what could not go with you into the next season. The day they left, you weren't abandoned. Heaven escorted you out. Every tear you shed watered the soil of your next chapter. Every night you questioned your worth was a night God rebuilt it quietly. Every silence from them became space for God's voice to grow louder. Your heart did not break, it expanded. Your spirit did not weaken, it matured. Your identity did not collapse, it was revealed. Looking back now, you may notice the subtle ways God saved you, the storm that pushed you away, the truth that surfaced at the perfect moment, the peace that followed once the door finally shut. What felt like the end was truly the beginning. God did not take something from you, He preserved something within you. And that understanding leads us into a deeper revelation that this separation was never random. You were not just spared, you were chosen. Your pain was not pointless, it was preparation. God wasn't just ending a chapter, He was setting the stage for a calling you could not walk into while attached to someone who worshipped themselves more than Him. There is a sacred pattern woven through Scripture. Those whom God intends to lift, He first allows to be wounded. Joseph was betrayed before he wore a crown. David was hunted before he held a throne. Job was stripped before he was restored, double. Separation has always been the classroom of the chosen. And now you begin to understand what you survived was not random pain. It was purpose, shaping you from the inside out. You weren't overlooked, you were hand-picked. You weren't abandoned, you were set apart. The rejection you cried over was the very proof that heaven recognized your value long before people did. Chosen ones rarely fit comfortably in places that lack discernment. Your presence agitated spirits that wanted control, not connection. Your light exposed shadows that preferred to remain hidden. Your authenticity challenged those who preferred illusion over truth. That's why the narcissist warred against your spirit, not because you were weak, but because you were evidence of what they could never counterfeit. They saw in you what they refused to cultivate in themselves: humility, accountability, love that wasn't transactional. Your existence reminded them of the standard they had abandoned, and instead of rising to match it, they tried to reduce you to their level. When they couldn't, they tried to break you. But they couldn't break what God was building. Your tears were not forgotten. They were recorded. Heaven saw every night you held your own heart together with prayer. God counted each moment you chose forgiveness over bitterness. He witnessed how you stayed kind even when it cost you pieces of your soul. And heaven honored it. Many wonder why the chosen suffer so deeply. They mistake spiritual pruning for punishment, but God prunes what He intends to multiply. He wounds only to heal in a way that cannot be stolen again. You outgrew the environment that betrayed you, that's why it could no longer hold you. Oil on your life demanded a separation. Destiny required a cutting. You weren't meant to remain where pettiness was normal, where love was currency, where manipulation masqueraded as affection. God wanted to take you somewhere pride cannot enter, where grace receives honor, where brokenness becomes testimony and not identity. And this is what the narcissist is finally confronting. They did not lose someone ordinary, they lost someone heaven-marked. You were not a chapter, you were an assignment, a divine encounter placed in their life for a season, but they treated it like a convenience. They were never your source, God was. They were never your destiny, merely a lesson on the road to it. Chosen souls are often misunderstood. People interpret silence as weakness, boundaries as bitterness, elevation as arrogance. But God sees the heart behind every choice. He knows why you held on so long. He knows why you let go when you finally did. He sees the wounds behind your resilience, the prayers behind your decision to walk away, the faith it required to release what you once begged him to fix. You carry a calling that requires room to breathe. That is why God removed what suffocated it. You carry oil that requires crushing. That is why betrayal became the press that brought it out. You carry a light that cannot blend into darkness. That is why he separated you, even when your heart still loved. And now, as heaven reveals the truth to them, the story does not end in collapse, it shifts. What once stood as brokenness becomes a platform. What once felt like loss becomes leverage. The same God who allowed the heartbreak is the God who will turn it into harvest. Your story is not defined by who walked away, it is defined by who walked with you through the valley. There is a point in every divine narrative where the sorrow turns, where what once felt like defeat becomes evidence of God's justice. You are standing near that turn now. What the narcissist thought would break you has become the very thing God is using to build you. The tears that once felt wasted have become seeds in the soil of destiny, and seeds do not stay buried forever, they rise. Heaven is preparing a reversal so profound that those who mocked your silence will witness your elevation with trembling hearts. They doubted your worth because they only measured what was visible. God measured what was eternal. They assumed you would shrink without their validation, instead you grew. They thought you would chase them, instead you found God. They believed they left you empty, but grace filled every place they abandoned. This is not revenge. Revenge is human. Vindication is divine. God does not humiliate your enemies. He lets them watch him honor you. He prepares the table, and then he seats them where they cannot touch the food, only witness it being served to you. They will see you smile again. They will see favor surround you like armor. They will see God replace what they broke with something stronger, purer, eternal. You will not have to announce your comeback, it will be undeniable. And while they seek peace in all the wrong wells, you will drink from living water. While they scramble for attention, God will draw people to you by his presence alone. The opportunities they believed you'd never receive will chase you. The doors they tried to close will swing wide, not by human approval but by heavenly decree. Grace will speak your name in rooms where your voice has never entered. Destiny will call you forward like a trumpet at dawn. They once prayed for peace while sitting next to you, yet peace was never beside them, it was within you. Now they hunger for the very thing they spent so long belittling. They look for joy, but joy has followed you. They crave rest, but rest has made its home in your spirit. They long for connection, but connection fled when betrayal entered. They lost you casually. They will miss you deeply. And they will understand too late that losing you meant losing God's covering in their life. This is the reversal, not that you rise to spite them, but that God lifts you as a witness of his faithfulness. Your healing will preach louder than your pain ever did. Your restoration will testify to every silent sacrifice. Your growth will become the chapter they read and regret. And as the story unfolds, you will no longer watch life through the lens of wounds, you will see through the lens of purpose. What hurt you will no longer define you. What betrayed you will no longer hold power. You will walk in the truth that God did not just rescue you, He is about to reward you. You may not realize it fully yet, but your life is already shifting. What once felt like the end is beginning to unfold like dawn after a long night. Quietly, gently, without thunder or applause, God has begun the work of restoration, not as a sudden explosion, but as a steady sunrise. A little more light today than yesterday. A little more strength in the morning. A little more hope in the places that once felt numb. Healing rarely announces itself loudly, it whispers. It returns in softened breaths, lightness in the shoulders, the moment you smile without remembering the pain that once lived behind it. There are signs all around you that the season of return has begun. The heaviness you carried like armor no longer fits you. Conversations that used to leave you shaking now pass through you like wind that cannot harm. Memories that used to sting now visit as lessons rather than wounds. You sleep more deeply, not because life is perfect, but because God has quieted the storm within you. Your heart is no longer bleeding, it is rebuilding. God is opening doors the narcissist believed you were too broken to walk through. Opportunities once blocked are loosening. Ideas are returning. Connections aligned with purpose are appearing without force. People who speak life, instead of draining it, are being drawn into your path. You no longer beg for a seat at a table that dishonored you. God is preparing a table with your name engraved on it. A table where love is mutual, respect is reciprocal, and peace is not negotiated but natural. The narcissist will witness this shift. They will watch the harvest grow from the soil they once trampled. They will see favor resting on you like oil they cannot wipe off. Not because God delights in their pain, but because heaven teaches through contrast. In time, they will understand that losing you was losing access to grace, not because you were God, but because God moved through you. You did not just love them, you covered them, you prayed for them. You carried peace into rooms they poisoned. And when God removed you, He also removed what shielded them from their own consequences. Now roles have reversed. You stand where hope rises, they stand where regret settles. You walk toward promise, they walk through memory. Their tears are not your victory, your healing is. Their regret is not your trophy, your joy is. God vindicates not by humiliation, but by elevation. He turns the page not by punishing your past, but by prospering your future. Watch for renewal. When laughter returns to your voice without effort, when mornings feel like beginnings rather than battles, when you look in the mirror and see strength instead of survival, these are signs that resurrection is alive in you. God is restoring what betrayal attempted to steal, not as it was, but greater, better, holier. You will not walk into your future wounded, you will walk in wisdom. You will not trust blindly, you will discern. You will not love fearfully, you will love from overflow, not emptiness. Because you have seen what happens when you give your light to someone who loves darkness, and now you will give your light where it multiplies, not where it dies. So breathe, rest, step forward. Let peace be your proof. Let joy be your song. Let God write the chapters ahead with the same hands that held you through the valley. The story ends not with betrayal, but with restoration. Not with regret, but with resurrection. Not with loss, but with promise. The winter has passed. The ground is greening. Your season has begun. Amen.